It's September 10th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with Typhoon Yagi hammering Vietnam. The superstorm has ripped through northern Vietnam, leaving nearly 50 people dead and at least 22 missing since making landfall on Saturday. Authorities call Yagi the most powerful storm in East Asia in the past 3 decades. On to the medical dispute here in the country. More than 200 military doctors will be additionally dispatched to medical facilities that are struggling to operate because of staffing shortages. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are set to face off for the first time for their very first debate on Tuesday local time. Harris is reportedly fine-tuning for the debate, while Trump spent the eve of the debate campaigning as usual. Typhoon Yagi struck Vietnam over the weekend, causing bridges to collapse and buses to be swept away by the flooding. At least 49 people are dead, with many still missing. Ian has more.
One of the most powerful storms to hit Asia this year and the strongest to hit Vietnam in decades, Typhoon Yagi devastated the country over the weekend, sweeping away buses, sinking boats, and tearing roofs off buildings. Casualties from the typhoon have risen to at least 49, and over 20 people are still missing. This is the local government's estimate as of Monday, which has continued to rise from the aftermath, including a landslide triggered on Saturday. On Monday, a major bridge in northern Vietnam, the Vung Chau Bridge, collapsed, causing cars to fall into the river below. Over 10 people are still reported missing from the bridge collapse. Local state media reported that 9 people died on Saturday when Typhoon Yagi struck the country, with the majority of deaths occurring afterward due to flooding and landslides. After hitting the coast on Saturday, Yagi also brought extended heavy rain. The walls of a South Korean LG Electronics factory collapsed in Haiphong, northern Vietnam, causing significant damage but no injuries to employees. LG Electronics said that refrigerators and washing machines were floating in the floodwater. Although Vietnam's meteorological agency downgraded Yagi to a tropical depression on Sunday, it cautioned that there is still a high risk of additional flooding and landslides. Ian Hee, Arirang News.
And here on the local front, more than 200 military doctors will be additionally dispatched to emergency room at hospitals that are experiencing a lack of medical personnel. The Ministry of Health and Welfare announced that following the dispatching of 15 last week, 235 additional military doctors will be gradually assigned to medical facilities from Monday to Wednesday. Despite some of the military doctors requesting to return and refusing to work as they lack the necessary experience, the government is committed to enhancing training and communication. Meanwhile, South Korean lawmakers are working to address concerns about potential disruptions in the medical system ahead of the Chuseok holiday. Floor leaders of the rival parties met with the National Assembly Speaker on Monday and agreed to work together to bring doctors to the discussion table. This follows a proposal by the People Power Party to establish a joint consultative body involving rival parties, the government, and relevant members of the medical community to resolve disputes related to the medical reform. However, the Korean Medical Association said it is hesitant about participating in the talks, as it's demanding that the government scraps its plan to increase next year's medical school quota. The association also reaffirmed its position in a public statement released on Monday, asserting that the only way to bring back the trainee doctors is for the government to fully withdraw its plan to expand medical school quotas. This statement also highlighted the worsening healthcare crisis, noting that without the trainee doctors, not only are emergency rooms overwhelmed, but even the so-called Big Five hospitals are struggling and their remaining staff are exhausted. Amid the ongoing dispute with no clear resolution in sight, the early admissions process for medical schools began Monday, confirming that the government's original plan to increase the med school quota by 2,000 from next year remains unchanged. And with the admission process already underway, the Ministry of Education has stated that reversing the increase would create a considerable confusion, so no changes will be considered. Following liquidity crises at e-commerce platforms Timor and WeMakePrice, the authorities and the ruling party have come up with plans to strengthen measures against harmful trade practices. Our Lee Si-hoo reports.
Soon, online sellers here making profits through harmful or anti-competitive practices will have to alter their sales tricks. On Monday, officials from relevant government ministries and the ruling People Power Party announced new plans to stop e-commerce platforms from exploiting individual sellers and making sales through unethical practices. Until now, it was common for platforms to beat out competitors by giving preferential promotions for their own products, carrying out tie-in sales, and demanding the lowest possible supply prices from sellers. However, all these prices will likely be banned and the platforms will be fined at a higher rate as the administration and the PPP introduce new changes to current rules. The ruling party members of the National Assembly Legislation Committee will introduce changes to two current laws, the Monopoly Regulation and Fair Trade Act and the Act on Fair Transactions in Large Retail Business. This will make it fundamentally illegal to cheat customers and legally require the platforms to provide swift payments to sellers while also improving their liquidity ratio. The long-anticipated measures follow nationwide market chaos from early July, caused by liquidity issues at platforms TMON and WeMakePrice. Subsequent government support measures soon after helped sellers awaiting payment and customers waiting for refunds, but there have since been numerous calls for measures for proactive prevention. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The International REAIM Summit began on Monday, bringing together high-level delegations from around the world for a two-day discussion on responsible use of AI and the military domain for peace and security. Our Kim Jong-sil has more.
The REAIM Summit, a platform for global discussions on the responsible use of AI in military applications, kicked off on Monday in the South Korean capital. Following the first summit co-hosted by South Korea with the Netherlands in The Hague, this second summit was co-hosted by South Korea, the Netherlands, Singapore, Kenya, and the UK. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol stressed the importance of the summit amid rising geopolitical tensions.
Faced with profound uncertainties on both technological and geopolitical fronts, it is all the more imperative that we set the norms and governance for responsible AI to ensure international peace and security and to preserve human dignity.
Minister Cho called for a balanced assessment of AI's impact on global peace and security. He also highlighted the importance of pooling ideas to ensure the responsible use of AI and called for a robust governance framework to establish guardrails. The Netherlands Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans also underscored the importance of international cooperation.
REAIM shows that we stand united in dealing with current challenges. It represents our shared dedication to develop and deploy applications of AI in a responsible way.
Delegations from more than 90 countries took part in the summit along with experts in the military and AI sectors.
And South Korea is a global leader in technology and is really innovating in ways to use AI and autonomy in the military space as well.
He further addressed why stakeholders need to discuss the responsible use of AI in the military domain.
The technology is widely available. Anyone can go online and download AI tools that they can use. And so I think we need to assume that competitor nations, rogue nations, terrorist groups all have access to AI. And we just need to find ways to ensure that the AI that we're using for defense is better.
On the second day, the REAIM Summit plans to adopt a blueprint for action that aims to outline guidelines for responsible AI governance. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
As North Korea unveiled a new mobile missile launcher earlier this week, the Pentagon said the regime's show of military power is nothing new, while reiterating security cooperation with regional allies. According to Pentagon Press Secretary Pat Ryder on Monday, the regime has always used media reports of images to send messages, referring to the photo showing a new 12XL transporter erector launcher. While Reuters said he won't comment on the military capability of the latest launcher, it raises speculation that the North could use the vehicle to launch a new intercontinental ballistic missile. Amid the latest threat, the press secretary said the primary focus is to work with its allies, including South Korea and Japan, to preserve regional security and stability while deterring a potential North Korean attack. Marking his regime's 76th founding anniversary on Monday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly called on his officials to further bolster the North's nuclear forces, saying intensive power is what defines real peace. Let's turn to Professor Mason Ricci for more. Welcome back, Professor Ricci.
Great, thanks for having me.
Let's begin with how there was no major provocation to mark the regime's founding anniversary. Any particular reason why it's so quiet?
Well, I think that there are a number of reasons. One of them could be internal issues. We know that, for instance, North Korea has experienced some significant flooding recently, and that has caused some political instability, or at least some difficulties, let's say, for the regime to respond to. We know that Kim Jong-un has, in some sense, felt himself compelled in one form or another to apologize for not doing a better job with that issue, or his regime not doing a better job with that issue. So that may be a part of it. Another part of it may be that they're waiting for the U.S. presidential election, either to get closer towards it before they decide to do something, if they want to send a message to the U.S. during the end of the presidential campaign, or perhaps even waiting until a new president is in office before they carry out some type of kinetic provocation. It may also simply be the case that they're not ready technically for something to test, and that they may not right now have scheduled something for a demonstration or a training exercise.
Right. Instead, the North State media reported this morning that the leader Kim Jong-un made an important speech on the direction of national projects, which includes bolstering its nuclear forces. Now, why such a comment? What's your take on the speech and the report?
So again, one can imagine that there are elements of this that are about internal propaganda, shoring up regime support by focusing on national projects, and those include obviously construction projects and agricultural projects and all kinds of things that the North Korean regime wants to do, and that includes obviously building nuclear weapons, which it uses as a source of regime legitimacy and as a sort of national rallying point. Of course, there's also an external direction to this. That is to say, essentially giving a sense to North Korea's adversaries, especially the United States and South Korea, of the fact that North Korea is building up its nuclear arsenal. Kim spoke potentially about exponential growth of warheads. Now, I don't necessarily believe that exponential is literally what he meant, but significant growth in North Korea's number of nuclear warheads. And that, of course, just underscores the fact that North Korea has zero interest in denuclearization or even talks about denuclearization.
Well, Professor Ricci, on top of that, North Korea also made sure to report that the leaders of China and Russia sent congratulatory messages to the North for its founding anniversary. Is this significant in any way?
Well, I mean, this is sort of standard diplomatic protocol for strategic partners and allies. States all over the world, whether those be states in good international standing, or whether those be rogue or authoritarian nations like North Korea or China or Russia, send these types of messages to each other on these important occasions. There's nothing unusual about that per se, but it does, of course, remind us of the fact that there is this sort of axis of disruption in terms of the rules-based international order, notably China and North Korea, Russia and North Korea in particular, but also China. And that especially North Korea and Russia have gotten much tighter over the last 18 months or so, really since a few months after the war in Ukraine started and Russia and North Korea started to engage in sanctions-busting trade.
Well, we also have to talk about North Korea's resumption of flying balloons carrying trash with you, Professor Richie. Is this solely because North Korean activists and defectors here in the South continue to do the same? Is it because they are doing it, we're doing it kind of strategy?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. I mean, this is a sort of classic, what we call gray zone activity in international security. Which is to say that North Korea can engage in an irritating and an annoying behavior that does hurt South Korea in one form or another, even if it's just sort of political subversion, and that really carries with it very little risk for North Korea in terms of what South Korea can do in response. You talk about activists, for instance, and South Korea sending balloon leaflets, anti-regime balloons with these leaflets into the north, and would that cause North Korea to stop sending these trash balloons? The probable answer to that, at least in the short term, one would think would be yes. But that's not the same thing as to say that the activists here in South Korea are responsible or the cause of what North Korea is doing, just because North Korea would stop if they would stop. And at the very least, I think we would find that North Korea would engage in some other type of provocation if it isn't these balloons with trash in them.
Well, then why balloons over missiles? I mean, missiles are more obvious ways to threaten the South Korea and surrounding the raised tensions on the peninsula. Is it because balloons are more annoying and irritating, like you said?
Well, they are annoying. They are irritating. As I said, they're this gray zone activity that falls below, the threshold of some type of significant retaliation by South Korea. It might simply be the case that North Korea doesn't want to waste the missiles if these are missiles that would be used really for demonstration purposes or exercise purposes rather than testing. Testing is something different. There's an outcome there technically that's important. So North Korea may not want to waste the missiles. They may also think that this is in some ways more effective in terms of hurting Yoon Suk-yeol politically. At this point, I think South Koreans largely don't pay attention to these missile launches very much anymore, at least if they're short range and intermediate range and medium range missiles. So these trash balloons, they carry a different valence because they're an annoyance to people. The photos appear in the media. And it's less abstract in some sense than a missile launch, which to some degree we see reported, and most people just simply move on with their day.
Right, and they're a lot easier to spot and realize for many citizens here in the country. Alrighty, Professor Richie, thank you so much for making your time with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Great, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
On Tuesday, local time, U.S. presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will face off in their first televised debate. With the two candidates neck and neck in recent polls, the debate is expected to help swing voters make their decisions. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The televised debate between U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump was the catalyst for the incumbent dropping out of the race. That led to Vice President Kamala Harris running as the new Democratic Party candidate. And another showdown is set to take place on Tuesday, as Harris and Trump will meet for their first televised debate. Hosted by ABC and moderated by David Muir and Lindsay Davis, the debate will last for 90 minutes. Taking place in Philadelphia, the two will square off on key issues like the economy, immigration, abortion rights, crime, and foreign policy. With the two candidates neck and neck in recent polls, the televised debate is expected to give a much-needed push to convince swing voters one way or the other. Trump is likely to blame high inflation on the Biden administration and its clean energy expansion policy. Harris is likely to counter by presenting her economic pledges to reduce the burden of inflation on the middle class while slamming Trump for looking after the rich. The two will also lock horns on immigration issues and abortion rights. And following a recent school shooting, pundits expect gun control might also be brought up. And all eyes are on how Trump will respond, given the assassination attempt on the former president. As for the rules of the debate, the mics will be muted while each candidate takes their turn to speak, despite a request from the Harris camp to have the microphones open at all times. The debate will begin with questions from the moderators with no opening statements. Harris and Trump will, however, have a chance at the end for a 2-minute closing statement. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Seong, and this is The World Now. Following Algeria's presidential election on Saturday, the country's incumbent president, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, has been re-elected to the position after winning almost 95% of the votes, according to Algeria's electoral authority. Official preliminary results declared on Sunday showed Tebboune had won 94.65% of the 5,630,000 votes cast, ahead of opponents Abdallah Ali Hassani Sharif's 3% and Youssef Al-Shisha's 2.1%. 78-year-old Tebboune is backed by Algeria's military and faced only nominal opposition from candidate Sharif, who is a moderate Islamist, and Al-Shisha, a moderate secularist. Tebboune, who is now set to serve a second term as Algeria's president, was previously elected in 2019. Tebboune's re-election will mean that Algeria, Africa's largest country by area and populated with some 45 million people, will continue with a governing program that focuses on increasing social spending, such as unemployment benefits and public housing programs, which saw an increase in Tebboune's first term as president. Now, Filipino celebrity evangelist preacher Apollo Quiboloy, who is accused of sexual abuse and human trafficking in the Philippines and the United States, was arrested on Sunday in the southern Philippines following a weeks-long police search. Now, Quiboloy and 4 other co-accused surrendered to police at the headquarters of the religious group, the Kingdom of Jesus Christ in Davao City, after local authorities gave a 24-hour ultimatum to give up. 74-year-old Quiboloy and his co-accused were flown to the country's capital Manila on Sunday night before being locked up at the National Police Headquarters. Quiboloy, who claims to be the appointed Son of God, is the founder of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ and is also wanted in the U.S. on charges of sex trafficking and bulk cash smuggling. Quiboloy, who has millions of followers in the Philippines, has denied the charges. The country's president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., said Monday that he will not be given special treatment. In Nigeria, at least 48 people have died after a fuel tanker truck collided with another vehicle and exploded on Sunday. The State Emergency Management Agency in north-central Niger State said that the fuel truck collided with a truck in the state's Agay area, carrying travelers and livestock such as cattle, while several other vehicles were also caught up in the incident. Abdullahi Baba Arab, Director General of the Niger State Emergency Management Agency, said that at least 50 cattle were burned alive at the scene of the crash, and that victims that have burned beyond recognition were given a mass burial near the site of the accident. Niger Governor Mohamed Umaru Bago expressed condolences and warned drivers to always be cautious and abide by road traffic regulations to safeguard lives and property. Now, serious road accidents are commonplace in Nigeria, where, according to the country's Federal Road Safety Corps, there were 1,531 gasoline tanker crashes in 2020 alone. Pope Francis arrived in the Southeast Asian nation of East Timor on Monday for his penultimate stop of his trip through Asia and the South Pacific. The 87-year-old Pope landed in East Timor's capital, Dili, on Monday and was welcomed by some 750,000 people, more than half of the country's population. The last papal visit to Dili was in 1989 by Pope John Paul II, when the territory was occupied by Indonesia. The country of just some 1.3 million people has the second highest proportion of its population identifying as Catholic, after the Vatican, with 97% of the population identifying as Catholic. The government allocated some $12 million for the Pope's visit. Now, East Timor gained independence from Indonesia in 2002.
Good morning. Is the intense heat coming back to us? Many central parts of Korea saw record-breaking September temperatures yesterday. Here in Seoul, as well as Tebboune, saw temperatures above 34 degrees Celsius under bright sunshine. And it looks like it's going to be as hot as yesterday. Now, Monday's heat brought us a tropical night, with Seoul waking up to the latest tropical night on record this morning. Heat alerts have been upgraded or expanded to more parts of the country. Stay safe under sizzling heat and blazing sunshine. Jeju, meanwhile, will see afternoon rain, which will linger into tomorrow with up to 80 millimeters in the forecast. And this afternoon, Seoul and Daegu topping out at 34 degrees, Daejeon, Gwangju at 35 degrees. Hard to believe Chuseok is right around the corner with this high heat. But Thursday's nationwide rain should bring slight relief from the unusual heat. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for our morning edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.